For as long as I can remember, the world I grew up in has revolved around the fashion concept of what it means to be a man and a woman.
Men in our society were depicted as strong, brave, hardworking, someone who takes the hard yards to provide for the family.
Women were seen as keepers of neatness, skilled in homemade cuisines, and raised to man the household.
These have been some of the basic concepts
Of Samoan men and women, until now. With today's information-based society and global trends, people are open to more opportunities than before, so defining what it means to be an ideal man and woman can come in many different forms. Working a 9-to-5 job in an air-conditioned office is considered the norm. And the same goes from working at home and cultivating the land for local produce.
While some believe in fighting for that degree to guarantee their future,
others are finding alternatives to pursue their passion thanks to the opportunities provided by the modern world.
But at the same time, sticking to the basics of life.
Our ideas of Samoan men and women are more diverse than before, and behind this diversity, we can find stories. Stories of how we, the people, define gender ideals in the 21st century. Yeah! In a country like Samoa, it's easy to let our culture define what it means to be an ideal man and woman. A lot of our perspectives on life are often based on how we were socialized in our community. However, this may have changed over the years. What do I mean by this? Although we are a small island in the Pacific, our people still have access to the outside world through social media. And so our Samoan culture isn't the only thing influencing people these days. Not to mention the different areas of academics, cultures, and religion, which all have different traits of idealism. So what is Samoa's concept of an ideal man and woman? And how is it different from our parents' generation? To help get a better understanding and deeper insight, our media team went around asking different people of the community what their take is on the subject.
I think I'd say that an ideal man would have to be respectful, open-minded, not afraid to stick to his own opinion, but his opinion has to be based on facts and experiences of his own.
As an ideal man, I'll say someone who's really adaptive to the changes in our modern life.
The way I see it, an ideal man or woman these days would be how we were brought up to honor our parents or elders.
I think your family is such an important part of who you are as Samoan that you kind of just can't take them out of the equation when you're trying to choose the right spouse for you, the ideal man or woman. Your family's opinions will always eventually come first.
To be an ideal man and ideal woman, we have to learn and we have to put into practice the respect and the value of cultures that we have learned during our early age.
There was only one man of the house, that was my old man. Looking at him, being responsible for us, taking care of us, even though we didn't have that much, he still, put food on the table, even gave me a good education, which is why I think the ideal man was a family man at first.
You're able to carry out your certain gender roles. So if you're a man, you need to be able to protect provide and raise a family. And same goes for culture. If you can't do like certain cultural practices, you're kind of like shunned upon.
Loa winga kama malikengi Samoa ide ku fa'aloalo. Koko e loa ka ko culture ale fa'aloalo e loa o Samoa. Ai loa kaukala isavali e loa o likengi lelei makama lelei konga ka ko
is one that knows his responsibilities within his family and outside of his family. He knows his priorities and sets his priorities straight.
Trying to go with the flow of what 21st century is in terms of being a very productive person in a family, trying to help out with the family and trying to be understandable.
People in the old days, they had to do things themselves, grab this from the store and walk to the store, and now we have cars. We have Seki Eats, Uber Eats and everything. Everything can just come straight to you. So I think it takes a lot of commitment and time.
An ideal woman in this day and age is a God-fearing woman. It's a woman who puts God above all things. So it's God, others, than herself.
I think I would like to encourage that more girls would look up to women who are more headstrong and more passionate about getting what they want, but not in terms of where they disrespect others.
I think the way for us to become the ideal person is to be understanding and more adaptive of the problems and the difficulties that we know that future generations are going to face.
So we covered the viewpoints of the young people and members of the community. But to get a deeper insight, we asked academic leaders of different backgrounds for their point of view.
My ideal man or woman in academia is somebody who is driven and motivated. An ideal woman for me in academia is somebody who achieves her goals and somebody who can help others to achieve theirs.
But in the various careers that I've had, particularly in the police and interviewing a wide or dealing with a wide range of people, is the ability to be able to understand people. You can't have a stereotypical view of any particular group of people at all.
The golden rule in the Bible that I think applies to everyone, and that's universal, that you just have to do unto others what you want done unto you. And there's no gender in that statement.
I've grown up with only two fears in my life. Fear God and fear my dad. I was born here in Samoa, raised in New Zealand, and there was only one goal that my dad gave me, and I feared him so much that I achieved those goals. And that was be the best you can be, go as far as you can education-wise, and be a leader.
I think the biggest thing is the ability to communicate. From my era, you have these stereotypes again of the male being the breadwinner. The female was the person who stayed at home, looked after the family, didn't go to work, and the men could not express their feelings. And so from then till now, the ability for people to actually communicate their feelings, how they're feeling professionally, how they're feeling personally, and having a mutual understanding across the two genders is, I think, a big thing in terms of what an ideal person should be.
Like, I think in Samoa, when you go to school, the expectations are not as divided. The curriculum is for everybody, it's universal, so your roles are more focused on your academic achievement rather than your gender. I grew up with grandmothers who were very traditional. So of course the way we dressed when we were growing up was very conservative. You have to be very proper and show the elegance expected of a Samoan or a young Samoan to my type. That was the foundation of what shaped my identity as a woman, but of course that has changed.
My dad had driven me so hard in the sense that I became the type of person who was skeptical about, what I was being taught about God. I wanted to learn more about God through my own eyes, not through the eyes of a whaiwhiao, because they were all men, because I wasn't hearing it from the whaiwhiao's wife. Her point of view was contaminated or corrupted by her husband, because everything that came from the whaletua was always from the husband. It was only the whaiwhiao I thought, they preach about righteousness and justice, and yet they will only allow a man to stand up there. So to have this view of an ideal academic as someone who is motivated, driven, sets goals, achieves it no matter what. If I consider my dad's generation, his ideal woman is still the same. The goal is to get married. So for my dad, I think it hasn't changed. But for me, my ideal person, man or woman, is somebody who is independent, who can provide for his or her dependents. With women particularly, who get married, leave their jobs, go and have children, that's a risk, because if they're not treated well in the families that they've made sacrifices for, they tend to stay in that environment because they've got nowhere else to turn.
Things are always transitional. Even traditions are always in transition. Nothing ever stays the same. So nowadays we have access to information more than ever. We are being exposed to global cultures. A lot of women that I know, and even myself, are very self-sufficient. Women not only are expected to have a career, to be well educated, to be leaders, all of these expectations are additional to the roles that they have been playing over the years, which is to be maternal, to look after the family home. The concept of an ideal woman based on popular perspectives, I think, has changed. There's more that's expected of them.
The young people do have access and are questioning the traditional Samoan values, when I think in fact they can both help out. Today you have issues such as gender equity, social inclusion, you have things like LGBTQ, which is all suppressed, all hidden in those days. It probably contributed to things like suicide in those days. Now it's a lot more open and a lot more open for discussion.
There's a saying that talks about how when you educate a man, you help one family. But when you educate women and girls, you help raise the living standards of a whole community. I don't really focus so much on what's detrimental and what's bad in life. I think life is too short and we need to focus on what's positive.
Okay, so for me, an ideal man or woman in this day and age is somebody who is self-sustaining and who can provide for his or her dependents.
Another important aspect that we covered was the religious perspective. And as a nation founded on God, we thought it would be appropriate to reach out to members of different denominations.
How does the life of faith, build good character? Well, it does, because it teaches you their identity, who they are, where they come from, and your purpose in life.
I think for me, a life of faith it's the very foundation that enables young Samoan men and women to build and maintain a good character. A life of faith is very much a matter of the heart, and so when a young person truly understands, truly comprehends who they are as a son or a daughter of the Most High God, it compels them to do good.
I'll quote this from the Bible. Matthew 6 verse 33 says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be given or added unto you." So once the youth know this, you're ready to go.
One of the most important qualities is integrity. I think we live in a world where it's becoming more and more rare to see people who are genuinely honest and don't make opinions and situations change who they are. I think my personal life of faith, it grounds me in a way where I'm able to be myself and be genuine, and I pray that and I hope that conveys to young people that the value of integrity and that how that stems from just a matter of being true to oneself.
So in Genesis 1:27 it says, "So God created man in his image, and in the image and likeness he created him, male and female." So in God's governance structure, the male is the leader, the head, the visionary. And the woman, like he said, that man should not live alone. The role of a woman, according to the Bible, is a helper and also an incubator. He called the female a woman. It's a man with a womb. So the function of a man is the visionary. He's the one with the strategic plan. And the woman comes along to fulfill the man's vision. The first thing you ask a guy, what's your vision? If he doesn't have a vision, sorry, I need a man who has a vision. So the role means that whatever the husband gives the woman, she incubates it and gives it back to him multiplied. So, example, the husband builds a house and the woman makes it into a home, right? So don't date, don't marry a guy that has no vision or comes with a different vision from yours. So really, what makes the qualities is really knowing your purpose.
To conclude our search, we interviewed young entrepreneurs and people with extracurricular backgrounds.
Hello, I am Kaino Thompson Futanga. I'm third dan black belt and head instructor of class Taekwondo.
Taloflava, my name is Josefa Domingo Enari. I work at iSpy Radio. I do the morning show 7 to 10, and I also work at Sleeping Giant Films.
From a martial art perspective, an ideal man and woman is confidence, sacrifice, family orientated, being able to defend themselves, being respectful, having certain disciplines in their lives.
What it means to be an ideal man, in my own perspective, I think an ideal man is somebody who provides for their family. Somebody who, no matter whatever happens, always thinks about on the good side, the bright side. A lot of things that I've learned so far from the culture is respect. Respecting your elders and respecting others within not only the workplace but your community, but always know to know your place and know your ground. Know that you have a voice and you can always voice your opinion. When you know your ideas are worthwhile and you know you can achieve the goal.
You can help in a lot of areas. You can help teach them about self-sacrifice. You can teach them about being confident in their own abilities, confident in themselves, to stand up for themselves, being able to defend themselves. What the youth would benefit from sort of this change is that they become more confident, being able to speak out, specifically talking about domestic violence. Most of the time it's women who are the victims. And martial arts or Taekwondo can help give them confidence to speak out, to defend themselves, and to keep themselves safe through physical training, spiritual training.
For me personally, like taking up Taekwondo, yes, Taekwondo has broken that barrier where like every female, like any female, any male can take up Taekwondo. It's not like a male specific sport, no. Like all genders can take it. It helps build leaders. So it can be a man and it can be a woman too.
I think it all comes down to how the young generation sees martial arts. A lot of kids that come in here, they think it's a form of violence, but it's a form of self-defense. It also has to do with spirituality as well. We come in here, we meditate, we free ourselves from our ego. Every martial art, there is a spiritual impact. It would help definitely with a lot of them going through a lot of challenges in life.
Samoa is getting into that age of information. In order to understand what the outside world's got for us, we need to be updated, like with the internet. And so the benefit is everyone knows. Everyone's in the know. Everyone's in the circle. Social media, websites, learning this and that. The bad thing about this influence is that the culture is slowly drifting away from the younger people. That's why I think it's key that the education system slowly get back to like teaching the Fat Samoa Nganganu, which I think is key because you know the saying in order for you to know yourself, you got to know your culture. That's everything for us Samoans. My background stories is that I never finished school. I wasn't a big fan of education. Not a big fan of learning. I wasn't a big fan of the educational system here in Samoa. I thought it was limited. This is something that the government and the people running the show in Samoa should create more opportunities for the younger people. Because you know, nowadays it's not everyone wants to be a lawyer, not everyone wants to be a doctor, not everyone wants to be a mechanic. You know, there are people out there who want to be dancers, they want to be singers, and they want to do this profession like full time. And that, I believe, is one of the markets that we should crack into. I've always followed the saying, when opportunity knocks, you gotta open that door. That's what I've been living by so far. So as soon as I left school, saw an opportunity, went to radio, been doing that for a while. Big fan of cinemas and movies. I worked at the cinemas for a while. It was enough for me, man. That's my dream. And so I've been very blessed lately to work with a number of people with Sleeping Giant Films and I Spy Radio to give me that exposure. They're helping me out to nurture my talent. I haven't finished school, so I don't know much, of what I know now. I know the basics, but when it comes to stuff to do with the world, I need help. I left the education system, but I'm not done learning, and that's what I think everyone should keep on doing. Never stop wanting to know. Never stop learning.
Men don't cry, women are inferior in every way. Why? Preconceived notions, only created to bring each other down. Wow. Stereotypes, limited rights, battles of identity that we fight. To sum it up, we can say a car driven by division blinding us with its headlights. Headline reads, I am a man, so I can do what I want, say what I want without much consequence. But that sequence is a con. Now I'm way past gone, hiding my emotions with my pieces that are broken. Having little to no respect, all because I fear vulnerability and openness. Doesn't make me less of a man, no, it just means I better understand how the ways of old, when carried as an etiquette, can be quite cold. The ideal idea of a person, I feel, has become a diversion from all the possibilities that can blossom if we let our minds grow.
From my upbringing, what I think an ideal man is just someone who knows when to stand his ground and knows when to sort of just calm down and assess the situation before sort of diving into, being aggressive or whatnot. And also the idea of humility. It's not an easy thing to do, to be humble. You should be humble, but never let people treat you like a doormat. Yes, it has changed for sure. Coming through high school, going through foundation, you have on one end of the spectrum sort of this athletic, good-looking, well-built person. Then you have the other end of the spectrum, the person who has his nose stuck in a book, who's very, what people would consider, smart. And it sort of goes back and forth. The ideal sort of guy or kid, boy in our class was like the fastest kid who could run, right? So we're like, oh, okay, that's what we're supposed to live up to. And then going into foundation, like, oh, maybe it's this kid who's smart and who's always like doing good in class and answering all the questions. Maybe I should be like that guy. And then you get to a point where it doesn't really matter anymore, because you can be successful in either a sport or at school. It's not for everyone. Sports is not for everyone. Being an academic student is not for anyone, and that's not a bad thing. So I think, again, balancing act, just finding that middle ground and what you prefer to be an ideal man or woman in your own generation. I think pursuing it has made me, a little more confident and outgoing. If you would tell me like back then that I was going to do it or that I should do it, I would never agree with it. I would never want to even think about it, because I was sort of so afraid and in this box that I put myself in. But I think pursuing it, has definitely let me sort of come out more, branch out, and sort of explore the other sides of me that I never got to. It's helped me a lot to sort of build my character, and I'm very, very thankful for that. And just make sure that you are enjoying what you're doing. Because if you're not, it's useless. Don't go because someone told you or that you're seeing someone. Just make sure that what you're pursuing is what you love, because as one of the many sayings, I don't know who coined it or came up with it, if you turn your career into a passion, you don't work a day in your life. So I think that's very important for everyone to know.
Olo ingoa o longi Johnny Junior tau lafo sele mai le Alofagia o sala ilua vai moso sa kaua ia sa paikia You might have seen me in my past lives as a presenter for a kids TV show called What Now. I was also a stunt double for a guy called Popo on a film called Take Home Pay. Now, when you ask what makes an ideal man or what makes an ideal woman, you're really asking to what are we measuring it to? Like a lot of us, we look around society now and we measure it to magazines, movies, film, like, stores. You look around, what do you measure your masculinity and your femininity to? For me, there's no other place but your culture. It's not a matter of masculinity, femininity, because that's a measurement from the Western world, is a man versus woman. But for us, we had everything, and a lot of us, I think that's the problem, is that when we become detached from our culture, we become detached to our purpose and our, I guess, way of being, if that makes sense. I remember back in the day in Avele, for example, my teachers always used to warn us, be careful when you go over to, Iaku Mamau, because you might get lost. Don't allow yourself to be measured by other standards or anyone else's measuring stick of you. Look to your angangu'u, look to the gifts, to the culture that God gave you. I think, to be honest, we went out to promote any ideal man or woman. There's just ideal us, ideal Samoans. For me, it kind of showcased all of the types of Samoans or males and females. For example, you might get the stereotype in the bar scene where that big guy is just like, holy, like you don't really realize, that a lot of the big island boys in Samoan culture are just really big teddy bears. Like, you look at the character dynamic of the story of Take Home Pay, and it was really, really good because his character, Alama, was all about contributing back to the family, all about giving back to the family. Whereas Popo, he symbolized another, I've got family members like that. We know people like that in our families who say, who question, who are like, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do that? And a lot of the time they don't get the answers to their questions, so they just go with whatever they feel. Like Popo, he just ran off with the money. So it was really cool kind of seeing those two characters like kind of go through that, because it kind of gave you perspective of like, oh, this is what you got to be very careful of when change comes. You don't allow change to take over fully. Like, if anything, through the telling of our films, I really, really pray, I really, really hope that it creates conversation for us to have many more talks. Our stories are valid on the screens now. There is no such dream that is big enough to be impossible.
So to summarize it all, let's review our findings. We found that defining ideal gender roles in Samoa is no longer limited to a black and white concept.
Our people, both male and female, are able to become leaders in their own fields.
Whether it is in performing arts, academia, the media world, or even in sports.
All these areas that used to be considered strange to the typical Samoan have now become more accepted in our modern culture.
Will this cause a disruption to our traditional values and what makes us Samoan? Well, let's look at it this way.
Think of our ideas as a tree. In order for it to grow well, it needs its roots for stability, it needs leaves for nourishment.
The roots being the traditions of our ancestors, and the leaves the opportunities of our generation, in which we can bear successful fruit. So what defines ideal gender roles for Samoan men and women today? We can conclude that it is someone who embraces the values of past and present generations for the sake of building a bright future for our people.